Greetings, subjects. Rejoice and be glad, for the God King speaks to you. Let it be known from this day and from this place that I am the indisputable Lord of all Targon. For it has, by divine providence, been bestowed to me through the sacred medium of DHL International Shipping. Behold, for this is Targon. Encapsulated within this magical totem, now within my grasp, lies all the lands, all the power of that sacred realm, and through my dominion am I ascended to the role of a god. But be not afraid, for I am benevolent in my rule, and those that pay tribute to me shall be prosperous.
Anyway, I'll take my tribute in gold, animal sacrifice, or gift cards to the Riot merch store because I want to get me one of those Earth hoodies. They look snug as hell.
In seriousness, let me try and get you a better look at this thing, because it's honestly quite gorgeous. What Riot sent me appears to be a piece of the continent of Runeterra encased inside glass. And I concluded that it's Mount Targon because it seems to be a western side of the continent. North is up on this thing, and it's got a lot of mountains in it. And that was confirmed to me by one of the rioters I spoke to about it, is that this is a piece of Targon, and it's been sent to me, and so now it resides in my home, and it's going to be up on my wall very shortly.
Finally, there was also a letter that came along with this particular little piece of continent, and it's quite nice. I'd like to read it to you. It goes like this. Lore doesn't exist without someone to tell the story. Like the rest of League in 2010, that story still needed work. Back then, the League of Legends was a political forum, and the world of Runeterra was a blob of land floating in the ocean. You loved it just the same. Even when we bent it, broke it, and rearranged it, you kept loving it. You stuck with us through the retcons and the reworks, the constantly shifting landscape, the false starts, and the foundation building. Maybe you had faith in the future we promised, maybe you didn't. Regardless, the story continued, and you were right there with it, sharing the always evolving world with more players than we could ever hope to reach without you. We may draw lines on a map or type words on a screen, but for thousands of players around the globe, you are the gateway to Runeterra, their trusted guide to the universe. And as the next chapter of League's story begins, we hope you'll be there to turn the page. Thank you, now and always, for telling that story. So that's quite nice. Not gonna lie, it feels nice to be recognized in that way. But I think there's something more going on here than just reaching out to content creators around the lore and thanking them for being interested in the story. I think Riot are also trying to signal that they're entering a new phase in the lore development. That's certainly been, like, what they've been doing for the past year and a half, 2 years maybe, has been attempting to establish. What they've been doing for the past few years is that they've been attempting to establish a new foundation for the lore. As I discussed when I talked about the history of the lore in the last video, which was about Noxus, League of Legends used to be effectively a political parable based on the principles of the Cold War, like based on that general worldview, and that doesn't really exist anymore. Riot has been attempting to build a new foundation from which they can tell lore stories, very much centered around telling stories inside individual factions. This is part of why I think that they've been defining the factions to be sort of, to have more internal conflict. Like in Demacia, we have the conflict between, people like Garen, who are in service to the nobility, which suppresses magic, and people like Lux, who use magic and who don't really want to be thrown out of Demacia just because they're mages. And we have Jarvan, who's attempting to kind of reform the nobility and bring more equality to the country, and, traditional forces versus progressive forces, so on and so forth. And in Noxus, it's much the same. We have the conflict between Swain and LeBlanc and Darius, who distrusts everybody equally because he has seen what happens to emperors like Darkwill who get corrupted and stuff like that, and who also has his own personal conflicts with the system within Noxus that once upon a time forced him to turn on someone that he loved. And it's the same thing with Piltover. Piltover now is in a conflict with Zaun, not as two warring city-states as they used to be, but with Piltover as the upper class, the rich, the wealthy, the privileged, the well-to-do, versus the, impoverished working underclass of Zaun, whose lives are kind of being ruined a little bit to feed the system of power that goes on in Piltover. And that's embodied through characters like, for instance, Camille, embodying the deadly power of the established order. Whereas down in Zaun, you have characters like Echo, who embody that, hope of getting out of the slums through sheer ingenuity, through their ability to manipulate materials. And the same thing goes for the conflict between Jace and Victor, which has very much been rewritten to kind of work into that general thematic of these two regions against each other, not so much as polar opposites, but as two halves of a whole that are struggling for supremacy. And so this, to me, seems a lot like a signal that Riot are ready, or at least they're getting ready, to tell more stories about the lore, more stories about, where exactly this universe is going to go. At least that's what I'm hoping that they're signaling. It would be weird to do this whole thing and send these things out to people if they didn't have some kind of plan in mind for the future. Anyway, I just thought I had to kind of provide some kind of analysis on the end of this thing so that it wasn't just me kind of bragging about being sent a cool thing from Riot. But I should also, let's be clear about something. I wouldn't have been sent anything by Riot at all if it wasn't for you guys. Like, if you guys hadn't shown up and actually wanted to listen to me make long-winded videos about character designs and, criticizing the stories and nitpicking the lore and all that stuff, would not have this very nice piece of Runeterra hanging on my wall now, and I wouldn't have this very nice letter from Riot, or, much of a YouTube channel at all, or indeed, quite a lot of my income nowadays actually comes from doing this. So I have to, thanks to Riot for sending me this thing, and thanks a lot to you guys for getting me to a position where Riot wants to send me things. Yeah. Thank you all very much for watching and for tuning in. This is very cool.